proceeds as well that are the chargebacks to support the staff and activities for the first half of this fiscal year. So there's the one item that's from GOLT is for that. The rest, the claims are mostly from TIF 8 and a few TIF 2 claims. The TIF 8 claims are associated with Project 180.
Are there any questions about the? Yes, Larry.
Yeah, can you give me some idea of what's involved in that $100,000 for the GOLT chargeback?
Those are the charges for the staff that's associated with administering the GOLT bond program. It's for my salary, Brent's salary, Curtis's salary, and our time is allocated among the different programs that we work on. So some of our salary is allocated for, like mine, for example, is allocated to general fund activities, and a portion of it to GOLT activities, and a portion of it to TIF, and across the different TIF districts. And I think a portion of my salary is allocated to MAPS 3 as well. Yeah, some of.
Yeah, it just seemed we haven't had that much GOLT activity going on. $100,000 seemed like a rather substantive amount of money.
Well, it's for the first 6 months of the year.
I got that.
And again, it's an allocation of our time, and it may not look like we spend quite a bit of time on GOLT activities. It may not always be apparent here, but we're working on a lot of different with a lot of different companies and a lot of different proposals right now.
Oh, Larry, would you like to see a breakdown? How
I would, myself.
Okay, we can get those for you.
Staff,
yep.
Thank you.
Our next meeting, have a breakdown of what those expenses were.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions concerning the ratification of the payments? The chair would entertain a motion to ratify the payments.
So move it.
A motion made and second to ratify the payments. Please cast your votes. And the motion carries. Thank you very much. We've been asked to make a slight change in the order of our items on our agenda under items 4. Item E is a resolution authorizing use of tax increment District Number 2 ancillary infrastructure funds, and we're going to move that up to the first item on our agenda. Brett, would you like to make some comments on that?
Yes, sir. Thank you. In February 2008, the City Council formally authorized the allocation of $300,000 for ancillary infrastructure to allow the city, through a related trust, to utilize up to $60,000 per project to fund incidental or ancillary infrastructure to support the development of TIF District Number 2. Since that time, the city has had one project, and that was the Northwest 9th Street, just off of Broadway, where you've seen a resurgence of retail around there with the Iguana and the Sarasara and the Steve Mason developments there. And in February of this year, staff was not contacted by Dr. Gigi Toma, doctor who specializes in the care of kidneys. Dr. Toma has invested. I've provided you a aerial of her location. It's at 10th and Chartel. It's on the southwest corner, and she's invested $3.9 million in a new renal care and dialysis facility. She's seeking assistance today in the amount of $60,000 to support the repavement of the alleyway just south of her building. If you go to the next slide, you can see it right here on the left of the screen, right off of Chartel, just south of 10th Street. There are two ways to access point her facility, and this is the alleyway. If you go to the next slide, here's the first one on the east side of the facility, where the alleyway connects to her parking lot. And then if you go to the next slide, you can see, again, right there on the far west side of the facility, the other access point to the alleyway. We've consulted with the Public Works Department, and we can utilize existing city contractors that we have under contract, and we believe we can go in there and put in a new paving of an alleyway under the $60,000 amount, and provide a good access point for the patients and to just help that part of town. I will point out that The property value before this property was purchased was around $4,000. I mean, it was owned by St. Anthony's, and now that a for-profit entity owns it, we anticipate that just the indirect revenues from that, indirect tax revenues will pay back the $60,000 investment, but in at least 3 years or less. So, Dr. Toma is here if you'd like to ask her any questions about her development also.
Are there any questions the trustees would like to ask? Larry?
The alleyway, this is going to be in effect a public street, like a public street. It's not on her, it's not just her private property.
I believe it's in the right-of-way. It's not on her property, it's a public right-of-way is my understanding with it.
Were this on her land, we could not do this. Is that correct?
Not without an easement.
Okay. But this is all... Okay.
Since Dr. Toma is here, maybe she'd make a couple of remarks. How long have you been in operation, and just kind of what's your patient flow?
Okay. Well, I have been at St. Anthony's for 20 years, and I've seen Midtown develop. And right now, the patients, we take care of dialysis patients, which are chronically ill patients that come to dialysis centers 3 times a week for pretty much the rest of their lives. That's usually 5 to 10 years. It depends on how sick they are. And right now, they dialyze at St. Anthony's Hospital, which is a little hard to get to. They have to go up to the 3rd floor. The parking's very poor. So my partner and I decided that we would set this up where it was on a 1st floor, would be easy access for the patients. And in addition, we have also put our office there, which makes it one of the few doctor's offices that are that accessible to their patients for dialysis. And we built it in Midtown. We were a little scared because I'd been there 20 years. And, you know, at one point we even thought about moving to St. Anthony's. But it stayed there, and so we're hoping it stays. But I've seen Midtown build up, and you all have done a great job with it. And we were just hoping that we could get a little help, because we have invested a lot of money. You know, it would be a safety factor for the patients. It also would kind of make it better looking.
It's a real improvement to the neighborhood. It's
Thank
a
you.
beautiful building, and I think this is a good project. We're spending the public's money on a public alleyway, and I think it's an excellent addition to the facility out there. So
Thank you.
congratulations. I think it's a fine project.
Thank you.
Are there any questions? We have a revised resolution that's been presented to the trustees. Would you like to comment on what revisions were made?
Since I did them, I guess I will. I changed in the title, I wanted to put that specific address. It did say just at the corner of 10th and Chartel, but it's now a specific address at 810. And then I added a whereas clause that spelled out that we'll be able to recover the expense that we make on this alleyway, the improvement, within 3 years with the indirect tax increment.
Okay. So there are minor changes, but that one is very
Right.
significant. It outlines our payback period being so short. It's a great project.
Thank you.
Is there any further discussions? The chair would entertain a motion to approve the resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Any further questions or discussions? Please cast your votes. And the resolution is adopted. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Okay, now we get back on our agenda, sort of. We've got a few other minor changes to make as we go through here. But item A under section 4 is a joint resolution regarding the Midtown HC LLC Economic Development Agreement and granting a 2-year extension of the project completion deadline from December 31st, 2010 until December 31st, 2012. Staff like to make any comments?
I'd like to introduce Chris Fleming, who's here with Midtown, to make a brief presentation about some of their projects. They've requested a 2-year extension in the completion deadline for their projects in Midtown. And really what this does is it extends the time period when we would have to begin to make TIF payments for the assessed value that they created. So, but he would like to go through some of their projects, and we'd like to have you see some of their results.
Again, Chris
Go ahead,
Fleming.
please.
Out of the projects, we've got most of them completed out of the ones that were subject to this TIF, and mainly 12th and Francis is where a lot of the projects were focused, and then also at about 10th and Robinson. And so the ones at 12th and Francis, is there a way to pause this thing, Curtis? Or is it just auto-clicking for some reason? Okay, so this is a duplex that you see on the screen now, and it's 905 Northwest 12th. And when we acquired this property, it was a flop house. You can see it was pretty run down. We've kind of changed it a little bit. They're two-bedroom units. Could you pause it again, please? Sorry about that. Don't know what the deal is. Two-bedroom units. Each of them have a study, big front porch, back porch, and balconies. They are occupied at this time, and they've been done for a little over a year. The next project is immediately right next door, and again, it was a flop house. And it's kind of changed a little bit as well. And there are 8 one-bedroom, one-bath units in this project. And again, those are all pretty well leased. I don't know, Curtis. The clicking patrol's got us messed up here or something. So anyhow, this project is you guys probably didn't frequent the neighborhood prior to us redoing some stuff over there, but you used to be able to be upstairs and drop a bag of drugs to somebody downstairs, and they'd run it out to the curb and give it to the person driving by. So it's a little better now.
Chris?
Yes, ma'am.
What does a unit in this location go for?
These units run from, and they're a little bit bigger units, but they run from anywhere from about $775 a month to, in this building, about $1,050 a month. And then the first building, they're 2-bedroom units, and they go from, $1,400 to $1,550 or so. The second floor would be higher. You get a bigger balcony and better views and that sort of thing.
Are they all rented now, Chris?
They're all rented now. That is correct.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Then if we move kind of across the street, and Curtis, can you pause that for me, please? Thank you. This was what it looked like prior to our work there. This is 1217 North Francis Avenue, and again, this was another flop house, and you can probably tell that by just how everything looked. This is how it is today. It's 6 units, 1-bedroom, 1-bath units, and pause one more time, please. Thank you. These ones are a little bit different. They've got concrete, like stained concrete floors, exposed ductwork throughout, and again, the rents are kind of in the same price range. You can see kind of in the pictures as well. We've got stained glass tile backsplashes, stainless steel appliances, that sort of thing. Then,
Are these occupied also?
Sorry, go ahead.
Excuse me, are these occupied?
Yes, sir.
All rented?
Yes, sir. 1221 Francis is again right at the corner of 12th and Francis. It's a little office building. It was historically residential, but we just felt that we needed to have more 24-hour use maybe for that area where you'd have something to complement the people living at night. There'd be someone during the day, maybe to keep an eye on things, that sort of thing. And so we went back with office in this, and this is 2 office suites, 3,600 square feet each in this building, and it's recently been completed, and we've got 2 strong prospects for tenants in this building. One is a oil and gas equipment company, and one is a law firm. And so this is how it looks today. Back in the day, it had a stucco finish to it, and we went ahead and bricked it, and it's kind of how it turned out. Yes, ma'am.
Chris, the demographics on your residential units, are they typically employed downtown, or do you have an indication?
No, it's kind of the way that we've learned it, and we've got some other projects we'll get to here in a second too, but we've got a good sampling of things, and if you look at it, you've got across all age cohorts, you're going to have a slice of that population that wants to have the urban lifestyle. And so we've got a 50-something divorcee that's a cameraman at Channel 9. And we've got an attorney that works for the state, and she's a divorcee that moved in from southern Oklahoma. And we've got law school students that go to OCU, and we've got people that work at Devon. We've got people that work at Chesapeake. So, I mean, it's all across the board. So. And then this is Haddon Hall, which is 215 Northwest 10th.
Good job.
The county assessor says this building was built in 1901. It shows up on the Sanborn fire maps around 1911, and so that's, there's kind of a dispute there. If it is a 1901 building, it's one of the oldest remaining buildings left standing in downtown. It's 18 one-bedroom, one-bathroom apartments. We recently finished this, and we've been very encouraged by the leasing on that as well. And then this was a historic picture. It used to have sleeping porches on the front where those two guys are kind of sitting on the ledge there, and those have been enclosed over time, and it's a real interesting building because it was directly impacted by the Murrah bombing, and the parapet caps at the top of the building actually was shook loose from the bombing blast, and so when you drive by, you'll see a different color brick than what is historically on the rest of the building, because that's what they had to replace it with in 1995 or whatever. So it's a real interesting story behind it as well. So this was still how it looked kind of when we acquired it, and this is kind of how it looks today. We've got concrete countertops, glass tile backsplashes, stainless steel appliances, built-in shelves, hardwood floors, washer dryers. And again, the rents on these go from $7-ish to $1,050, and they range anywhere in square footage from about $580, $590 to about $750. And you've got great views of the downtown skyline when you get on the second and third floors. So those are the buildings we have fully complete. We've got two that are left under construction right now. One is the Packard building, which is at the northeast corner of 10th and Robinson, and then the other is the Klein, which is at the southeast corner of 10th and Harvey. So this is historically the Packard building. On the right is kind of how it looked when we acquired it. It's a real shame. The building was originally built in the late 20s, and it was boarded up from the time Packard and Studebaker kind of went broke in the 1950s until we took all that on a few years ago. There was one tenant in it, Pat's Bar, and they were a 50-year tenant of that building. So we've gone ahead right now and all the storefront glass is in, and they're currently inside building out the demising walls for the space. And we anticipate this being ready for, ready for move-in this coming September. And this is the Klein Hotel, southeast corner of 10th and Harvey. Again, another one of those flop house deals. When we were acquiring property, it was one of those things that, if you don't acquire these, then the rest of your property is not going to be as valuable as it could be. And so we're renovating this into 12 apartment units. There will be 6 efficiencies, which will be in smaller square footage, and they will also have smaller rents because of that. And so, we can get some more workforce type housing. And so this is kind of how it looks today. All the windows are replaced, and we're in the process of putting in the parking lot and curb and gutter, and there's some major structural work that has to be done in the building. It's a wood structure, and just over time it's deteriorated, and so we're going back in and rebuilding that. Then the final project that is subject to this particular TIF agreement is what we call the Guardian. It's at 1117 North Robinson, and it's about a 38,000 square foot building. We're planning 35 residential units for that building, and we are working with our architect to finish those plans right now. And this building was really the major cause for the need for extension on our agreement. And so here's a rendering of what it'll look like at the end of the day. Do you guys have any questions about anything else?
I have a question for the staff. This kind of extension or something that's been done in the past?
It was actually addressed in the contract. They weren't sure when we initially negotiated the contract whether they'd be able to complete it within 2 years. So we included a clause, rather than just give them to 12, we said you could come back and ask for a 2-year extension. So it was contemplated. We haven't normally done this. We've never had anybody come back and ask for an extension, but this was contemplated.
Okay. Any additional questions? Yeah, Larry?
Just a procedural question, if you could, Riley. We voted on this at the council this morning. Is there a timing process where it's supposed to go first to us here in this committee and then to the council, or anywhere, any time, any way it goes? Is there any?
This board has the contract with the formally approve it, but the council has to approve it at some point. And I suppose procedurally you could deny it today, and the council, their action would be for not.
I don't want to deny it. I'm just curious, is there a process where it's supposed to go to A and then B?
Yes. Typically, they come here first.
Okay,
and then go to city council. There are a few exceptions to that from time to time, but I think this had more to do with the timing of the request and the timing of the meetings and canceling meetings and things. So.
Any further questions or comments? The chair would entertain a motion to approve the project.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion or questions? Please vote. And the item's approved. Chris, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Good luck on your project.
Thank you very much.
Item B, 4B is the next item on our agenda. It's the waiver of consultant selection procedures and contract for architectural services with the Architectural Design Group, Project MB 1053, City Center East Garage Pedestrian Corridor, 100 North Harvey Avenue, a fee of $55,000. This would be TIF money. Kathy?
This is a project that's included in Project 180 and funded by the Devon TIF. It is a part of the agreement that we entered into with Devon that we create a pedestrian connection within the East Garage from the Rotunda building over to Oklahoma Tower is basically what's going to happen, or they could get to the street from there. We have considered, we're asking you to consider waiving consultant selection because ADG is the firm that designed the East Garage, and we felt they had the best familiarity with the project and the building and could expedite getting this done. So this is a project that was contemplated even when we sold the East Garage to the Oklahoma Tower Group, and we kept an easement so that we could construct this pedestrian connection. So that's kind of the history of this project.
Any questions? Chair would entertain a motion to approve the item.
So move it.
Second.
Motion made and second to approve item B. Is there any further discussion or questions? Please cast your votes, and the item's approved. Item C is change order number 2 and amendment number 2 on a Myriad Gardens Botanical Renovation Project, an increase of $264,000. Part of it is TIF money and part of it is general obligation bond fund money. Are there any comments or questions staff would like to make?
We can give you a breakdown of the amendment and change order if you'd like. Amendment number 2 is changes due to additional quantities of piping and excavation and trenching for storm sewers and water features and things at the Myriad Gardens. And then the change order number 2 is the waterproofing on the McGee Center deck, and some lithocrete paving changes. Let's see, am I getting this right, Michael? Trees that the city purchased that were not up to standard that we're going to substitute and acquire through a different subcontractor. Kind of a variety of things. Mike, do you want to add anything? Okay.
Any questions? We've got our expert in the audience here we could call on. Rhonda?
What is lithocrete?
He gets to answer that.
Lithocrete is a type of paving surface. It would appear to be like a very nice concrete. You actually are able to see the aggregate, and you're able to do it in color. And it's color that's integral to the process, so it won't wear off. But it's a higher-end specialty paving surface. And in this case, as you kind of look through the various items, you see an area around the lake edge where we added some lithocrete, but then you also see a couple of drive surfaces that we took it away. We didn't feel like it was actually an effective use of our budget to put it there. So as you evaluate these, sometimes you see adds, sometimes you see deduct. We did have an area where we actually took lithocrete back out of the project.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? The chair would entertain a motion to approve item C. The chair would make a motion to approve item C. Motion made in second. It's okay, it can't. Okay. Okay. Please cast your votes. And the item is approved, thank goodness. Next item, item D, is an item that I'm going to have a presentation on. It has to do with the new Alliance for Economic Development of Oklahoma City. It was presented to City Council this morning. There were a significant number of questions asked, and so I consulted with the staff, and we're going to defer action on this particular item until the City Council members have had an opportunity to get their questions answered. However, I thought it would be advantageous to go ahead with the presentation so we'd have a feel for what's going on. And there has been some publicity in the paper on this project, so I think it's timely for us to know a little bit more about it. So.
Well, thank you. Some of you have already heard this presentation, so I may look over here to the non-council member side of the table. The presentation that we have today is to talk a little bit about the plan that has been developed to try to institutionalize some of our economic development practices and the agreement that was presented to both the City Council and to you today and has been and will be deferred for a couple of weeks. Several months ago, we began working on a plan to try to address several different events and situations that we believed were catalytic events that could change the environment that we're working in for economic development. And we've had a great deal of success in our economic development projects, but it's really been on a very ad hoc kind of basis. We pull resources together from wherever we can find them, and we've been lucky. I think that came out at the City Council meeting when the council member said that today, is that, the reality is, to some degree, we've been very lucky. But we knew that there were several events coming in the future or things that were happening that could change the environment we were working in. And one of those was changes in leadership at several of the city trusts that are involved in economic development. For example, Paul Strasbaugh ran the Oklahoma Industries Authority and the Oklahoma City Industrial and Cultural Facilities Trust for many years, and he passed away probably about 2 years ago now. We knew that other people would be retiring or leaving their roles in the economic development arena eventually. And we wanted to also develop a mechanism to try to build a succession plan for the future, even what's going to happen 10 years from now and who's going to take my place, for example, someday. So we were trying to develop a plan to do that and to deal with changes in some of the resources we deal with. The passage of the gold bond authorization and the strategic investment program is one of those things. MAPS 3 and the potential for leveraging those public dollars into more private investment, TIF funding and TIF projects. TIF 8 and Project 180 has really kind of changed the dynamic downtown and creating a world-class environment where we can try to attract more headquarters companies. The approval of the Court Shore Urban Renewal Plan and the impact that that will have on the Urban Renewal Authority and trying to implement that plan. And then kind of our general optimism about the local economy and trying to be prepared for national economic recovery so that we can position ourselves in a way to help make things happen as financing and other things become more readily available. So the plan, as I mentioned, was designed to build on past successes and develop a full-time focus on implementing economic development using best practices. Some of the goals that we had as we were developing the plan was to find a way to eliminate duplication of effort and resources, provide a more efficient and coordinated delivery of services where the roles and assignments were more clear, and there might be less competition or turf battles sometimes over who should do what, and to develop a structure that could be responsive to several different policy-making boards like the Economic Development Trust. So the proposal was based on creating a new not-for-profit organization with a board of directors that would represent the entities that would be served by the new not-for-profit, and that includes the Economic Development Trust, the Urban Renewal Authority, the Cultural and Facilities Trust, the Oklahoma Industries Authority. The city manager is also a board member, and then there are 2 at-large members. One of the requirements in the bylaws is that one of the board members be a city council person as well. So when we think about the alliance, the way I began to really think about it was what is the alliance not going to do? The alliance is not going to set policy. Policies are made by the different boards that the alliance will provide services to. So it is not a policy maker. Policy is set by the city and by the trusts. It won't decide whether to do or not to do a project. It won't decide whether or not to fund a project, or it won't decide to select a redeveloper. All of those things will be decisions made by the city or the trusts involved. And that isn't to say that just as staff does now, that we won't make recommendations, because I think that that's the role as a service provider, is to make recommendations about things, help the policymakers weigh the pros and cons and make decisions, provide information, answer questions, but not to make those decisions. So the Alliance will focus on coordination, management, planning, and implementation of the GOLT bond program, the TIF program, the city's retail strategies, and other economic development incentive policies. It will focus on job creation, site identification, and development. Right now, the trust is participating in an employment land study that will help us identify sites for future job creation opportunities. So that might be one of the things that we help implement. The planning and the coordination of the downtown, or the MAPS 3 projects. Right now, Urban Renewal has a contract with the city and the Economic Development Trust to carry out certain roles related to MAPS 3. They are acquiring land for the Central Park right now. So that would be one of the functions assumed. To maximize the private investment potential created by the MAPS 3 projects, I think some of the projects have the ability to spur a great deal of private investment. The transit project, the convention center, and then the park all have opportunities to create mixed-use developments, residential developments, and more commercial developments adjacent to them. I think there's other projects like the senior aquatic centers that could have the same kind of impact. And then another role would be to implement the financings associated with the projects. The services are to be provided to the city, the Economic Development Trust, the Urban Renewal Authority, the Oklahoma Industries Authority, and the Industrial and Cultural Facilities Trust. Again, these entities are to be treated like clients, and the Alliance would basically serve as a consulting firm or a service provider for all of these different entities. One of the things that we had to consider while we were making these decisions is why a not-for-profit. And one of the things that I can't really emphasize enough is that this entity would not be a policymaker. It would be a service provider, much like a consulting firm is. It will be project-focused and will use resources on a project basis. So it may need more flexibility in obtaining resources, scaling up, and then scaling back down again to respond to the project load, again, much like a private engineering firm might do if they get a great big contract. The structure we felt was necessary to serve a diverse set of clients that have a long history of independent operations. Some of these entities, like the Oklahoma Industries Authority even, is a county beneficiary trust. It is not a city trust. So we have, different policy-making boards that are associated with all of these different entities, different beneficiaries, and again, some of these entities have had a long history of independent operation, like the Urban Renewal Authority. And finally, the creation of another city entity would increase government reporting requirements, administration, and the size of government. Also, when we were doing research and as we have visited other cities, the Chamber sponsors inter-city visits every few years, and on some of these we've seen examples where they have created a not-for-profit entity to provide these kind of economic development services to their community, and one of those examples that we saw was Kansas City. And some others that we think are very applicable to what we're talking about exist in St. Louis, Missouri, and in Louisville, Kentucky. The scope of work that's in the agreement today includes things like serving as the lead economic development entity for the trust in the city, that it would manage the city's TIF program, it would provide oversight and coordination to Project 180 as it is a TIF project, provide oversight and coordination of the GOLT bond program, serve as a liaison to the Myriad Gardens Foundation and the management of the Myriad Botanical Gardens. This one may seem a little bit out of place, but I've been working for a while with the foundation on developing a new approach to the management and operations of the gardens that would increase the private sector's role in that, in the management of the gardens. And so that's one of the things that we need to get finalized and continue to refine in the future. Facilitate the examination of existing and future downtown parking garages. Parking downtown is a fundamental criteria for attracting more jobs to downtown, and we're in the process of doing a new downtown parking study. So that'll give us an idea of what our future demand and supply will be for parking in the future, and whether or not we need to look at building new parking garages and where they may need to be. Again, leveraging MAPS 3 resources to encourage private investment is included in the scope of work. Facilitating the implementation of land use strategies. Those include things like the Quarter Shore Urban Renewal Plan, but might also include some of the downtown plans and studies that are completed by the city's planning department. Some of the requirements in the agreement that I wanted to pull out and emphasize, because I think they help to address the issues of accountability and involvement that the policymakers have with the Alliance, is that it requires at least quarterly reports to the trust and or the city council. And reports is pretty broadly defined, and we can tailor those to whatever the trust would like to see. There'll be an annual work plan for the professional services to be provided that will be approved by the trust in the city. If there's things in there that you don't want the Alliance to do, they could be eliminated, and things that we need to be doing that aren't there, we can add. Annual approval of the fee for the plan of work, and the agreement also requires that certain employees will be provided by the city to work with the Alliance, and that includes people like Brent and Curtis and Wiley, who work with the trust right now. The agreement with the city and the Economic Development Trust has funding for the current fiscal year for an interim period of $56,000 that comes from the TIF and the GOLT programs, much like the chargebacks that you saw on the claims earlier in the meeting. And actually, it is the same source of funding as the chargebacks. And then for FY 11-12, it includes, again, TIF and GOLT administrative funding, funding from the city's general fund, and MAPS 3 use tax funds, which the MAPS 3 use tax is not the MAPS 3 sales tax, and it is a part of what it's designed to be used for is that administrative support, planning support for the MAPS 3 projects. How will efficiencies be achieved? One of the things that we really want to try to do is eliminate this duplication of effort and resources and try to combine the resources of all these different entities to leverage them into economic development. So the president of the Alliance will serve as the executive director of the Urban Renewal Authority, the general manager of the INC Trust and the OIA, and the surrogate general manager of the Economic Development Trust. And the idea behind this is that it will help to free up resources that can be used to improve redevelopment services or for other activities within these various entities. I think that there may be other efficiencies just besides the president of the Alliance serving in multiple roles, but that we may identify staff resources either in the city or urban renewal or wherever that could be used to help complement what we provide for economic development now. Maybe get a little bit more productivity out of people and give them different work assignments to work on in the future. So in summary, the agreement is designed to institutionalize the existing approach that we've used in the past for economic development projects. It creates a one-stop shop for economic development activity to implement a more efficient and focused delivery of economic development services and create a structure to more effectively compete with other cities. One of the things that maybe even Robin can attest to is that it is a very competitive environment that we deal in economic development, especially in the job creation world, and we have to have the ability to respond quickly and put together packages of incentives or resources or even just staff to help make those projects happen. So that was one of our other goals. We had several questions at council about the funding and the board composition and some of those things. So we are going to be looking at some of those issues that were raised at City Council and getting back with them. But if you guys have any other questions or comments, I'll be glad to try to answer those, or we can get information back to you before the meeting on the 26th.
Are there questions? Frank?
Kathy, the skill sets, the type of skill sets that will be on your staff, the Alliance, what are they?
Well, we will probably use the existing staff at Urban Renewal for certain things, and then we will begin to build a transition plan for the future. But, I think one of the things that, for example, Joe Van Bullard has submitted his resignation from Urban Renewal as their executive director, and he would like to continue on in a project manager role, and that will fit perfectly into into the kind of resources that I think the Alliance will need. We're going to need people who can help implement redevelopment projects, like the housing projects that are underway in downtown right now, some of the ones that you guys either have seen or will see in Deep Deuce. So I think there's project managers. There are possibly financial staff people that will be needed. Obviously, some legal help will be a part of the team, whether that's provided by the city or contract basis. I think we will eventually try to have a couple of other project manager types or planner types to help with the implementation of projects. A lot of it's going to depend on the project load and the project that we have before us. And the idea is to not have a very big staff at all, and to go get resources when we need them. But but not to have a very large permanent staff.
So will you bring all the back office from the different entities into one place and basically consolidate the back office?
I would like to do that at some point in the future. It may take a while to transition to that point. And there aren't very many of those people right now. There's probably maybe 6, 7.
And so the funding is going to be discussed later. How do you fund this?
The funding, part of the funding was addressed in the agreement from the OCEDT and the city. Each of the other entities will also have a contract and will provide funding for services as well. So they'll identify, their own sources of funding.
So it's not a cost pass-through. Basically, set fees ahead of time, or will the cost be passed through to the entities?
No, we'll set a fee ahead of time. There'll be a set dollar amount for the fiscal year ahead of time. Yeah, based upon the scope of work.
And to some extent, we're already paying that. We're already paying a portion of the salaries of the city staff out of the gold and TIF proceeds. And so it'll essentially just be a redirection of those funds to this new entity. Larry?
Like, Kathy, would it be fair, the question I asked this morning, we're talking about, we just approved $100,000 for the first 6 months of the administrative costs for the GOLP projects. Would this new entity, would it be a goal of the new entity to be able to do that same amount of work for less money? You don't have to answer. Let me just, that's my definition of efficiency that I was trying to get at this morning.
Yeah,
Very
and I know,
simplistic
and
way.
that's why when I wrote my presentation, I said that it frees up resources to either increase or improve the level of services that we're providing for economic development or that can be provided to other activities. I don't know that it will reduce the budget any. I mean, I don't know that it'll be like, a deduct from the budget, but that it may free up that money to go put towards something else. And that's what I meant by that. I think that when, how the city's budget works, but, even on years when we cut, it doesn't seem to get smaller, but, and that's kind of what I think we'll see. But I think that we'll get more bang for our buck. You're going to get a high, what the desire is here, what the goal is to create a more efficient, more productive organization with the same amount of resources. Maybe slightly less, but certainly more production, more efficient with the same level of resources. And if we can save money, I mean, obviously that's a goal too.
Larry?
Just one other question. You articulated 3 areas that were very successful in using a similar model. You had Louisville, Kansas City, and St. Louis. As you do your research over the next couple of weeks for the council report back, I'd be interested, are there any cities or metropolitan areas that tried to use this model and didn't succeed, and what's the difference?
Okay.
And there may not
find that.
There may not have been any, but
They may not advertise their failures.
Well.
So.
And I would encourage the trustees in the next week or so, if you think of additional questions or if you read the contract and see issues in there that you're not comfortable with, let us know.
Call me.
Let the staff know, and we can address those issues at our next meeting.
if you're not doing anything tonight, there really was a very in-depth discussion that went on for a number of minutes on the council this morning. So if you want something to do tonight, watch the council rerun, because the questions that were asked, I thought, represented a very broad spectrum of eyes looking at this from around the city, and it'll give you an insight, I think, into what the council will be looking for when this comes back up for them in 2 weeks.
And I'd like to point out to the trustees that this is not going to make our job any easier, because we'll still have the policy responsibilities and the responsibility to define what these assignments that are this new entity will take on our behalf. And so we can't sidestep the responsibility we as trustees have to administer policies for this new entity. So I think it's a point that troubled the council a little bit this morning, but I think we'll clarify. I'm going to ask this item be deferred, any action on this item, until we have the city council's briefing, until they're comfortable with the aspects of it. I think that might be helpful as well. And it gives us a little more time. Then if questions occur to you all after this meeting, why, please pursue those questions with us. Okay. Any other comments on this particular item? Okay. Now, are there comments from staff and otherwise? Bless you. Comments from the trustees? Comments from the public? Robin, you're a public today. If you have any comments, we'd be glad to hear them. Hearing none, we are adjourned.